Infective endocarditis, the most commonest organism of infective endocarditis, Staphylococcus aureus. Okay, then you have a viridans, that is streptococci. The most common structural lesion associated with endocarditis. If there is endocarditis, what are the structural lesion? Most commonly is tetralogy of Fallot, ventricular septal defect, aortic stenosis, and patent ductus arteriosus, but never the atrial septal defect. Okay, so structural lesion associated with endocarditis are tetralogy of Fallot, ventricular septal defect, aortic stenosis, and patent ductus arteriosus. And most common valve involved in infective endocarditis after prosthetic valve replacement. Remember, after the prosthetic valve replacement, the commonest valve involved in infective endocarditis will be the aortic valve. Okay, aortic valve. Otherwise, overall, mitral valve is the most commonest valve involved in infective endocarditis. If the cause is prosthetic valve replacement, then aortic valve is involved. Valvular abnormalities seen in carcinoid heart disease are tricuspid regurgitation plus pulmonary stenosis. Okay. We know the classical Roth spots, Janeway lesions, Osler nodes. These are the classical findings of infective endocarditis. There is this new one, that is hemotoxylin bodies. Hematotoxylin bodies of Gross are seen in Liebman sac endocarditis. That is Liebman sac endocarditis. As I told, the vegetations are seen below the valve. This is a classical of SLE. So in SLE, you also see few bodies, that is hematoxylin bodies of Gross. Okay. And then you have a mitral valve is most common valve involved in rheumatic heart disease also. I mentioned in the previous one, in rheumatic heart disease, mitral valve is involved. So you have a Caricum's murmur. That's because valvulitis, acute mitral valvulitis, you get Caricum's murmur. So most common valve getting involved is mitral valve. But if there is another cause, that is prosthetic valve replacement, you will have a aortic valve involvement. So infective endocarditis, here few things, like I told, there is Osler's nodes and the Janeway's lesion. So what is this Osler's node? Osler's nodes are seen in subacute bacterial endocarditis. They are tender, painful erythematous nodules over the fingertips, hands, and the feet. Okay, they are tender, painful erythematous nodules over the fingertips. Whereas this Janeway lesion, they are also an acute bacterial endocarditis. They are painless and they're non-tender subcutaneous maculopapular lesion over the pulp of the fingers. Okay. Few things which I mentioned earlier, that is a McCullum's patch. It is seen in rheumatic mural endocarditis, especially the posterior wall of left atrium. There is this few new one, that is soldier spots, or you also call it as milk spots. These are pericardial fibrous plaques seen in healed or chronic pericarditis. So in case of pericarditis, that is if it is chronic pericarditis or healed pericarditis, there is fibrous plaques which you can note. This fibrosis is a milky, that you call it as milky spots or soldier spots. Where do you see? You see on anterior surface of the right ventricle. Remember, the location is very important. McCullum's patch, posterior wall, left atrium, milk spots, anterior surface, right ventricle. Okay, this was a new one, that is soldier spots and milk spots. And how do you diagnose this infective endocarditis? Whereas in rheumatic fever, you had a Jones criteria. Whereas in infective endocarditis, you have a Duke's criteria. Again, you classify it as major criteria and the minor criteria. In the major criteria, look for positive blood culture. In positive blood culture, it can be typical organism for two cultures, that is, it can be streptococcus or any other organism. And persistent subacute, persistent positive blood cultures taken more than 12 hours apart. 3 or more positive cultures taken over more than 1 hour. Okay. And endocardial involvement is must, that is vegetations on the echocardiography you need to find, or new valvular regurgitations. It can be aortic or the mitral. And in minor criteria, The predisposing valvular cardiac abnormality, intravenous drug abuse, fever should be there, that is more than 38 degree, embolic phenomena, vasculitic phenomena, and then blood cultures, embolytic phenomena, it can be in the form of Roth spots, vasculitic phenomena, like petechiase, and blood cultures suggestive, that is organism grown but not achieving major criteria. Okay. And again, electrocardiography. So here you need to remember the pyrexia, embolic phenomena, and vasculitic phenomena. Okay.